Hi, Clutter Fairy fans. This is the Clutter Fairy Weekly for August 24th, 2021. I'm your co-host, Ed Gumnick, and I'm speaking with Gayle Goddard, certified professional organizer and owner of the Clutter Fairy in Houston, Texas.
Hi, everybody. The Clutter Fairy Weekly is a webcast and podcast where we dig deep into the clutter that stands between people and the lives they want to be living. We aim to make sense of where so much stuff comes from in the first place, and we offer strategies to slow down the accumulation, reduce the collection, and comfortably manage the stuff we choose to keep. We rely heavily on the questions and topic suggestions we get from you, our viewers and listeners.
If you're joining us in the Zoom meeting for the first time, you can share your comments and questions via the chat, and I'll try to make sure Gayle gets to them before we move on to another topic. You can also use the raise hand feature to let me know that you'd like to make a comment or ask a question yourself via audio or video. We're also streaming the webcast live on Facebook, so you can share your questions and comments there, and I'll relay them to Gayle. And during the show every Tuesday, you can call us at 669-900-6833. Use meeting ID 993-419-863 and password clutter to join the meeting. Okay, last week's tittle was to look around the house for something that represents a previous version of yourself.
Oh, yes.
And ask a few questions about whether it's still a part of who you are, about whether it's still useful, whether it still makes you happy. And we would love to hear comments from anybody who tackled the tittle last week. If you're in with us live, let us know what you did.
We got lots of comments around this. Lots of people really resonated with the concept of change and how change is reflected in the stuff. And so if you haven't had a chance to go look at the comments in the YouTube video about it, there's a lot of very great, interesting reflections on how people heard the material and how they applied it, how they thought it was pertinent for their life. And so the comments have been really interesting this week.
And Hardy got lots of good reviews. It is, by the way, Hardy, Hardy. He's named after the Hardy Toll Road in Houston, which is where somebody found him wandering and rescued him. And then he adopted us. Kat shared, last year I had a pregnancy loss. A few days before it happened, I had gone to a potluck retirement party and made cocktail wieners. We had leftover barbecue sauce and grape jelly. I have never felt right about eating it, considering the last time I ate it, there was disaster afterwards. I know that's superstition, but I also didn't want to let it go. Anyway, I did let it go because it made me feel bad. Plus, it's expired. Two good reasons.
Two good reasons to let it go. Excellent.
Also, I am currently expecting again, so happy ending.
Congratulations. First of all, let me say that. And I think what I like about that, what you just said, is people have things in their house that make them feel bad. And I never understand why. If it makes you feel bad, don't live with it. This is your space where you feel safe and happy. And so the things in the space should make you feel safe and happy. And if they don't, then you need to let them go, because they won't distress somebody else in the same way they distress you. Because that bad association, that bad juju for you, what the bad memories it brings up for you, do not go attached to the new owner of the stuff. And so you might as well let go of anything that doesn't, float your boat. And except if it's your dear husband stuff. Yes. Yes. If it's your dear husband stuff, then you have to have that's a different negotiation. But having things, I find that people have little caches of things in their house that they associate with a past negative event in their life. And they sort of don't deal with them because they don't want to face looking at them. But if you can face looking at them and get them out, then they stop sitting over there being a little black cloud that's permanent in your house. They can go away and you can have that black cloud be gone forever. And so that's my better wish for you, is that you remove the black cloud forever.
I think it is interesting that I think people hold on to things that remind them of their grief too, even though, you're not going to forget the people you're grieving. You don't need those You don't need those reminders, and unless the reminder brings you joy, then it just, yeah, it doesn't seem like a healthy thing to keep it.
Yeah, it is hard. And there's a difference between the person just passed away 6 months ago, and it was 5 years ago or 10 years ago.
Right.
You have to get past the integration of the loss. But then if you still have a bunch of stuff that's there that's making you sad instead of happy, or have happy reminders instead of sad reminders, then it's a process of letting go of things that make you feel bad. So yeah, you can't do that right away when someone is lost, but you can certainly do it 5 or 10 years down the road.
Rowan shared that a couple of months ago, she gave away 10 linen dresses, and she now lives in a very cool place.
Awesome. And linen dresses are not going to work in cool climates. And that's adapting to change, right? Like that goes with the change mantra. Like, I'm not living in a cold place a warm place anymore. So I don't need clothing that keeps me cool. I need clothing that keeps me warm. And that's a good adaptation to your environment. Good for you.
And Lise said, glass straw holder, let it go. No more daycare kids and trying to save the environment. So she doesn't need a straw holder anymore. No more straws.
No more straws in your life. Good job. See, y'all are getting it. Y'all are totally getting it. I'm so proud of you.
Jane said, after retiring 2 years ago, I have boxes of old work stuff in the garage. Needless to say, 99% of what's in these can go. By now, I've likely pulled out everything I'll need or want from those boxes. That's my next area to tackle.
Yeah, that retirement is a hard one, because that's a major shift. And we talked about that in the change video, that retiring so that you go from this is your main focus during the day, 5 days a week or 6 days a week, to not is a huge adjustment. And people often bring home huge boxes of stuff related to the job that you're no longer going to do. And it is part of the rite of passage, I think, that you sort of scoop all this stuff that's been super important to you and you bring it all home with you. And then you're like, oh yeah, I'm not going to do that anymore. I'm going to have my retirement life now. It has absolutely nothing to do with that. And so it's part of adjusting to the change, I think, that you lug all that stuff home. But you definitely have to circle back and go through it, make sure there's nothing personal, make sure there's nothing hidden in those boxes that came out of the desk or off the shelf that was really personally important to you, and let all that work stuff go on to the next person, for sure.
Eclair said, the tittle this week, it was a fail so far. I am wrestling with this one. I think I am just about ready to move on with new life. The mystery banker boxes with vague labels reminding me of past life have got to go, but I am sure resisting doing it.
Well, and then you get into there's two, I can't imagine what's in all of those boxes. And if you try to contemplate it as a full set, then it's a little bit more overwhelming than if you just try to get rid of one box at a time. Like, don't sit down with the intent that you're going to clear 15 boxes altogether. Just step up to one box, pull it out of the pile, go sit somewhere and work in it, and see if you can't just clear one box like it's any other box, and see how it goes. If you are super energetic and you can ramp yourself up for it, you can tackle them all at once. But I think if you have some resistance and reluctance anyway, the best thing to do is make your goal, I'm going to do one box today, not I'm going to do all of them. I'm just going to do this one, and let yourself peel the onion one box at a time, right? And ultimately you'll get through the 10 boxes or 15 boxes or whatever, and you'll be done. So it'll take 2 weeks instead of 2 days, but you'll be able to get there, I promise. And you'll be so relieved when you do.
Have you ever observed with clients that the imagining is worse than the reality? That resistance, we build up resistance largely based on our imagination of how bad something's going to be. And then you actually take a lid off a box and they go, oh, well, this is just such and such, and these, this half of it can go straight in the trash.
Yes yeah. And I can see the resistance and the reluctance from an emotional point of view, because I walk up to a box and rip the lid off and start pulling stuff out, and they're like, "Oh my God, you're touching the box!" And I'm like,
Oh,
"Yeah, it's a box. We're gonna work on that today." And then it's empty in 15 minutes or 10 minutes, and they're like, "Oh my God, that wasn't hard." I'm like, "I know. It was just you are having an emotional response to the process or the contents or what the contents represents, and it doesn't change the actual nature of the physical opening of the box and the moving of the stuff around." And so if you can just get past your own emotions, then you can dive in and empty a box in a hurry. And it's one of those things where the success builds on itself, right? Like you finally take the first step on the journey, right? And you open one box, and then you're like, "Oh, that was easy." And then you can go back, and then now you have experience under your belt, and it makes it easier to go to the next one and the next one. And pretty soon you're ripping through them like a mad woman, and then they're all gone. And I've had people where, there's 3 boxes in the corner and they've been there for 5 years because it's too emotionally stressful to deal with them. And then I rip them out in 45 minutes, they're all gone. And they're like, "Oh my God, that was," it's like, "Oh," and they don't quite know how to adjust to the emotional change of those boxes aren't over there mocking me and making me feel bad and making me feel like I'm not accomplishing something. And so there's always some catch up to do when I make the boxes disappear in a hurry. and then, "Oh, I don't have to, I can take that off my list now forever. How awesome is that?" And it takes people a while to cope.
Okay, let's get to our featured topic for today.
Okay.
Children aren't just small adults, and kid-related clutter presents a unique set of organizing issues. So today we're going to offer some strategies for organizing children's bedrooms, playrooms, family rooms, etc. And don't tune out if you're kid free, because we're also going to talk about man caves and she sheds.
I think of kids spaces as specialty rooms. They're not for everyone to use or enjoy. They're just their primary audiences. That's why man caves and she sheds work as a side discussion here, because they have a designated audience also. No adult wants to hang out in a kid's room, just like no woman wants to relax in a man cave, and no man wants to step foot in a she shed. These spaces must be designed for the designated users for them to work well. And so that's true for the kid spaces and also for the set aside adult spaces. I should insert here that neither Ed nor I have kids of our own, but I've worked on a lot of kid spaces over the years. So I have learned by trial and error, and it's not hard to figure out what works for kids and what's don't. They make it very clear for you that it's going to work or it's not going to work right away. So let's start with kids rooms, since they are the kids rooms are in the title for our show today. Kids really need spaces that are easy to navigate. They're going to destroy them every day, but if they're set up for kids, it's easier for them to help with a reset. So you want to design with the kid's size in mind. For example, don't put kids' books on a bookshelf that they can't reach themselves. Large bins can be a problem too if the kid can't reach to the bottom of the bin. If they can't reach the bottom of a bin or a basket or whatever, they're just going to knock it over to get things out of there. And there's an adult equivalent of this problem. If you think of a medium or large, particularly large moving box, when you fill up a large moving box and it's standing there, and it's easy to put things into the box. But if you're a short person, when you try to take things out of the box and you bend over at the waist, you can't reach the bottom of the box a lot of the times. And so you end up having to empty what you can and then turn the box on its side and let things slide out of the box to empty the box 100%. And so the kids' versions of that is having large or tall bins that they can't reach into all the way. So obviously this is more of a problem with a toddler who is very short, but any, kid up to a teenager is going to have a hard time with certain height and level of bins, boxes, storage containers that they can't reach all the way into. And I think adults just sort of go, "Oh, I need some storage for the kids' room." And they go buy what's available and they never think can my kid actually get into this bin without turning it over to reach everything? So that's one thing. You also want to design storage with their level of knowledge and development in mind. So you want to put labels on the storage bin that include words and pictures, or just pictures if the kids are not at a reading level yet. A lot of people go to organize the rooms, and part of how the kid knows where to go to get what they want is that they see a label or they see a picture. And if they can't read, of course, they need a picture to be able to tell where the Legos are, be able to tell where the books are. So if you include things in bins that they can't actually see into, then you need to give them some guides to follow. They need to have words and pictures, or pictures, so they can go pick what they want. Another thing that parents don't consider often is that for little kids in particular, but well up into being a teenager, I would say, a lid is a barrier to entry. So the smaller the kid, the more true this is. And don't expect kids to uncover a bin, put something away in it, and put the lid back on. Their storage options need to be a drop and go option. So that's why there's all those open top containers. And it, like the IKEA drawer, like this in behind, there's lots of little basket inserts, bin inserts that go into these units, and they come without a lid. And that's part of why, because you want to see the smooth thing, but the kid needs to be able to get it in there. And if you want help resetting their own room, then it needs to be easy for them to do it. Another thing to consider is that any storage over their heads or out of their reach means that you'll be the one taking it down or putting it away, not them. So granted, that's a good way to control things that you don't want them using without supervision, like art supplies. But if it is something that you want them to help put away, you can't create stuff that is up the wall for them to be able to get into it. So storage solutions that we naturally pick for ourselves will not work in a little kid's room or in their playroom or wherever you have all their toys set up, because they won't be able to reach them. For stuffed toys and other squishable items, a large, open, collapsible sided container, think of a squishy, like laundry basket kind of thing. Those kind of containers work really well. They flex with the adding and removable particular pieces. So if a kid grabs it, the side can collapse a little bit. If there's a whole bunch of them, you can stuff it and, the side can expand a little bit. That flexible side thing really helps with stuffed animals. And it makes it easier for the kids to put things in and out. I've seen the clever netting that they designed to hang like in a corner of the room or hang from the ceiling or whatever to put stuffed toys in. But if you install something like that, then the kids won't be able to use it. It'll be too far away from them. So you'll be putting everything away again, and they won't be able to get down whatever stuffed toy they want to get at that moment. So I think that works better for older kids and not little kids, is what I'm saying. For all those toys with a million little parts like Legos and Polly Pocket, those are just brands that come to mind, but there's lots of kids toys that get created with a million little pieces so they can keep selling you more little bitty pieces of the same thing. And so having separate containers that are clear with lids that latch will help keep all those little bitty bits together. For little kids, those containers with latching lids may be barriers to entry, but that's good in that they won't open them until you come and open them for them. And so you have some control over how often they get into these things and strew them all everywhere. Once they can negotiate that stuff themselves, then you can also ask them to participate in putting things away. And if they have one little box for Polly Pocket, they can pluck all the Polly Pocket out and throw it in the box. Even if it's not organized, it's all in the same container. And so I've sat with people, with parents, and cleaning up kids' rooms and like resorted all the little parts back to all the little games. And this is something that you will do for as long as your kids have games and toys. You will be resetting and resorting all those pieces. So anything that you can do to sort of keep them all in one place will be helpful. I will say that they're still going to be all over the floor every day, but you can grab them and park them in their containers again. and think of it as a meditative practice. If your kid becomes a Legos fan, then you're going to have to look into special Lego storage to handle the large volume of pieces. I'm just warning you now. There are kids that get into the Legos, and there's a decade from 5 or 6 or whatever to somewhere in their teens where Legos are the bomb diggity, and they just want more and more, and it just is an ever expanding collection of things to step on and make you cry. So anything that you want that you can invest in managing Legos will help you as you navigate that decade while they're into it. And then there'll be some point where they're over it, and then all the Legos have to go.
Are you saying I was supposed to outgrow Legos at some point?
Yes. You don't have Legos in your house, do you?
No, I don't. No, I don't. But I would if I didn't already have too many other demands on my time.
Right.
I would play with Legos.
And they loop adults in with the the kits that they build.
Yeah.
Like here's the Star Wars and the Star Trek ships, and here's the battleships, and they definitely try to keep adults in on it, right? Yeah. So Legos is its own problem. You have to get Lego specific solutions when that becomes their fascination and collection. So just know that in advance. And there's been lots of development around that. Legos has worked hard to come up with ways to store. All other companies have come up with ways to store Legos. So if you have a Lego problem, you can Google Lego storage and get a whole bunch of ideas on how to cope. The other thing that is important for kids in working in this kind of room is you have to teach your kid the practice of picking up at the end of every day. And they won't be able to clear up everything. Like, it's not reasonable to expect a 4-year-old to destroy a room all day long and then pick it all up in 15 or 20 minutes. That's not going to happen. But if you can get them into the practice of spending 5 or 10 minutes putting their favorite things away before bed, it really helps them learn the idea of resetting an active space every day. And that concept of whatever active space you're in that needs resetting and a little cleanup at the end of every day because it is actively in use all the time. And if you ignore it, it will be destroyed. And if you spend a little bit of time every night putting things away, it will function better and it will be more user-friendly the next day. And so having your kids, whatever age they are, participate in some level of putting things away is a real help. Now, of course, the parents are going to be in there doing major amounts of cleaning, but even if you just say, here's your 5 favorite things, and we need to go park them we need to go put them to bed. We need to go park them in their parking space. However you want to make it visual and make it make sense to the kid. It's a good thing to teach them the idea of resetting. They'll use it forever. And, the older they get, the more they can clean up behind themselves. And so start them early while they think it's fun to do what mom and dad say, or that they're mimicking what mom and dad are doing. And so you can get them to help you put things away. Okay, so let's talk about she sheds and man caves. For anyone who lives with one or more people, a she shed or a man cave is a way to have a dedicated space that's not shared with anyone. It's meant to be a retreat for a sense of privacy and for control over a space. There's no need for a man cave if you live alone. This is all about how people cohabitate and coexist in a successful way. These adult rooms are also meant to be reflections of all the person's favorite things are. So the plans for these rooms need to include those favorite activities that you want to happen there. If that's video games and sports on TV, then you need to plan for what supports those functions. If it's reading and relaxing with music, then you want to plan what supports those activities. These rooms are also the place where you can maintain your version of organizing. This is especially important when the people you live with organize to a different level than you do. So if this is your room, then you set the standards of organization in there. And if you're the person that's not allowed in this room, then you have to accept whatever amount of organization happens in there. Some organized people have trouble with a room in the house that is a wreck by their standards, or vice versa. But this is how each of you can live with this stress. It's like a release valve to have one room set up for your favorite activities and organized in the manner that you are the most comfortable. I know a lot of couples who combine the chaos to the one room, or combine the open space and the blank counters to the one room. It allows that person to fully relax in a space that's visually and functionally designed exactly for them. And there's great peace and recovery in that setup. It is a space where, especially if your organizing styles are very divergent or very far apart, then this is a way that you can cope with living with each other. There are a lot of people who live in a level of chaos that makes them crazy because their spouse is not a very organized person, and they find it super stressful to live with how much chaos is in the house. And if they have a she shed, a man cave where they can go and it can be perfectly ordered, then it gives them a time and space to relax completely and rest their mind and get relief. And if you find that the level of organization in the house is way too tidy for comfort, then being in a space that is less controlled is also your way of relaxing your mind and recuperating. So you have to honor your level of organization in those spaces and set them up to make it work for you. Okay. That's what I have to say about that today.
On the subject of kids' rooms, Lee said, we had fun singing a cleanup song while picking up.
Oh, right. And kids like, let's make it fun. You know, I know that you don't think it's fun, but if you singing a song certainly makes it seem like it's more fun for a little kid. That's a great idea. I mean, you remember, think of a teacher who is in elementary school and has to change activity every 15 minutes. They do an activity and then they have to tell the kids, put that book away, take out this one. We're going to clean up this before we go on to the next thing. You know, here's all the crap materials. We got to put all that up. They're constantly coaching the kids to to close down the one thing and take out the next thing. And, you know, they're giving instructions about resetting all day long. And so it's part of how the kid is exposed to the idea of close this activity, clean it up before we start the next one. So you're getting reinforcements at school when they go to do activities at school. So if you start saying that stuff at home, it's going to be familiar. And, you know, figure out what the cleaning song is at school and come home and sing the cleaning song at school in your own house.
Sue said, this is sort of on the topic of involving family. Sue said, I hired my adult son to reorganize my office last week. I gave him a vision, a written plan of where I want things to go. Been working on that for quite a while. He's making it happen and doing a great job. My office floor is clear, at least the middle. LOL.
Woohoo!
My part is sorting my desktop pile of papers, the cards in the drawer, etc. But he's going to set up the Freedom Filer system for me at the end. Are you familiar with that one?
Yeah. That's been around for a long time. Yeah, it's a paper file organizing product.
Oh, okay. I think that's great. Sort of outsourcing the part that
Is difficult.
you're not so great at, or maybe the part that isn't difficult but is distracting you. It would be a convenient distraction from the part that really needs your attention and that you can't hand off to somebody else.
Exactly.
I always want to do the fun and easy parts.
Don't we all, right? 100%.
Connie said, my principle was putting away should always be easier than to look for it. And it applies to me too.
Good point. And that's why I think people pick the storage concepts that they see in a store without thinking about how difficult it's going to be to use them. And they also super pack things without thinking about how hard it's going to be to unpack when they want to use something, when they want to get active with something that's in that little cube that they filled up completely to the brim. And then they need something that's in the bottom corner of the box or in the back of the cabinet behind 5 layers of stuff. And so we buy what is available in the store, but we don't always adapt it for use and error, having ease of active use. And so it's something that we have to consider when we're trying to build these kind of spaces. And for kids, it is specifically, you can't buy things that are designed for an adult to be used in a kid's room. That stuff all has to be down on the ground. So that's one of the things that we have to do as part of the tittle, actually.
Anya said, my she shed is also home for our cat. So it does not feel all my room having 2 cat litter boxes and food and water trays. Maybe I have to think that over.
Well, you could think that over, and they could stay there if you buy like cabinets. They make like end table kind of cabinets that you can put the box in, or like benches or things that are designed to sort of look like furniture and have the litter box be on the inside. Or maybe there's a better place for the litter boxes to live instead of in your special space. So it really just depends on how much space you have and what other options would be available. But you can certainly make it more visually appealing for yourself and more palatable. And with litter boxes, it's all about not ignoring the porta potty. Like basically you have a porta potty in your bedroom or wherever it is. So you need to clean the porta potty on a regular basis. You can't ignore it until it's completely full. That only makes it worse for you and for the cat. So it's one of those things like getting the mail every day. You need to get into the litter box and scoop it every day, every other day, so that it stays fresher, particularly if it's in the room where you want to be hanging out. So you're just doing it in service to yourself because you're the one that has to smell it. You're the one that has to breathe the air.
Suze had a follow-up comment. She said, Ed, I was stuck. I could have done the office, but I get emotionally stuck / overwhelmed. And that's a great time to ask for help.
Yeah, enlist somebody else's who is not emotionally distressed by it. Absolutely.
Yeah, somebody who has a fresh perspective and less attachment to the problem.
I'm very glad you had somebody to call on to help you. That's awesome. I'm glad.
Seuss also said, I think the point made about having less stuff for kids is really important. And I wonder how many of us, didn't have, there wasn't, maybe our rooms as kids tended to accumulate too much and parents were too busy, distracted, didn't see it as a problem. And so we sort of got a little acclimated or acculturated, whatever the word is, to having
more chaos.
Yeah.
And I think this is one of the things that we forget as humans, is that the reason that our kids are still our responsibility until they're 18 or 20 or 25 is because their brains have not finished developing. They don't come in with fully functioning, everything's working brains. And there's a childhood development process that happens. And so we assume that the kids have the capacity to do things that they really don't have the capacity to do. And being overstimulated by too much stuff is a real problem. And while parents and grandparents love to shower kids with gifts and, but my baby wants this, but it's helping them with school, or it's helping them be out of my hair, or whatever it is, we tend to give kids way too much stuff. Like think about what happens after their birthday or after Christmas. They're just drowned in new stuff, and it goes in on top of all the other stuff. And most people don't take the time to subtract some stuff out. Like if you're going to keep all the toys, then they can't play with 100 things at once. So the idea of having 100 things out that they can see and choose from is giving kids way more functioning and capacity than they really have. Like that level of choice is so hard for them, and it really shuts them down much faster than an adult, frankly. And we think that makes them happier. And of course they're going to squeal about new toys, but the idea that they can look at 100 things and find something in there to play without being stressed out is not realistic. It's much easier. I mean, and I've had parents tell me this about making dinner. You can't say to a kid, what do you want for dinner? Because you will never get an answer that makes any sense, right? You have to say, do you want hamburgers or chicken? Like, you have to give them a very narrow choice to get any kind of response that works for you at all. And so that's a perfect reflection of a million choices doesn't work. A little short list does work. And it's true in the playrooms as well. And so having a whole bunch of things there is very visually overstimulating for kids. And it really is a lot. It's way too much for them to navigate their way emotionally through and intellectually through. It's hard. It makes it harder for them, not better. And we forget that because, you know, for us as adults, when your brain is all functioning better, you don't have that response. Like, infinite variety makes you happier. And even we as adults have places where, okay, now at 20, I can't make a choice anymore because there's too many options here.
There's some fascinating research on that. There's a TED talk called The Paradox of Choice. I can't remember the name of the speaker, but he talked about the fact that having too many choices makes us less happy than having just the right number of choices.
Right.
Because when we have too many choices, if we make a choice that we're later not happy with, we blame ourselves. Whereas, you know, if you only have a couple of choices, it's not my fault. You know, I made a decision and it's fine, you know?
Right. You accept within the more limited parameters.
Yeah. Well, and one of the examples he gives is, you know, nowadays you go in the grocery store, at least in the United States, if you go in a grocery store, there will be 120 salad dressings. And once upon a time, there were like 3 salad dressings, and
much easier to choose.
You picked one of those 3 salad dressings, and if you didn't like it, the next time you got one of the other 2 salad dressings. And so, you know, now you get sort of paralyzed by the sheer number, the ridiculous proliferation of choices in areas where I don't even care. Any one of them would be just fine.
And if you think about a little kid's brain, and that they have in no way gotten to your ability to emotionally evaluate and cope with all those choices, you can see that a room full of 100 toys all over the floor is not making their life better. It's making it more of a struggle for them. And so people do things like they take half the toys and they put them in bins and put them in the closet, and they rotate stuff in and out for the kids so that they can have left choices. They get a little bit tired of those. They box those up and bring out another little set of 20. It gives them some choice to make, but it doesn't overwhelm them. And you can still regulate how much is coming in from the parents and the grandparents. It's like, yeah, I know you like to buy everything that the little kid points to, but it's really not. It's really their little kid judgment that's making that call. And they don't really have the brain capacity to deal with a whole bunch of options.
Dana asked, how long do you wait to get rid of kid toys that they only play with sporadically, maybe one time per month? Is it worth keeping, even though not a favorite group of toys?
So this is an area where, you know, when a mom is an infant, you make all the choices, the kid doesn't get a vote. But as soon as they learn to be able to say no, and you start taking things away from them without their permission, you're going to have a lot of trouble. And you know that I hear stories all the time about when I was 10, my mother threw all of my stuff away. Like, those wounds that happen in childhood stick with people well into their adulthood. And so, and they hold on to that damage and wound for a long time. And so it affects how they do things as an adult when something happened to them that they didn't have the emotional capacity to evaluate at the time. And so you can't exercise your mom control and randomly throw things away without their permission. And so it does get to be an exercise in asking them, negotiating with them, talking to them about donating things that they're no longer interested in because they have other things that they're more interested in, teaching them the evolution, and that when they're not as interested in it anymore, you can donate to some place where other little kids can play with it. We're going to go take this to the church playroom. We're going to go take this to the women's shelter. We're going to go take this to, you can teach them the concept of donating so that other kids can have fun with what they have had fun with and tired of at this point. And it's easier with the kid that isn't as attached, and it's harder with a kid that is more attached. You have your own struggles with depending on the personality of the kid, but it is a concept to help them cope with releasing things that are not super fun to them anymore. And, you also have to be careful that you're not throwing things out that the grandparents gave, and then the grandparents get all resentful. So managing of the inflow of stuff for a little kid, the mom and dad are sort of the gatekeeper from all other people. And it is a specific organizing challenge to manage the inflow when there's so many people around a little kid that love that little kid and they all want to give them gifts. And it's just way too overwhelming for a little kid to play with. And it's a nightmare for you to clean up. And so striking that balance, controlling the inflow of new stuff, managing the stuff while it's there so it's not too overwhelming for the kid, and then working out a solution for attrition and letting some of those things go away with the kid's permission is super important. And, they grow out of things. Parents get real attached to the first toys. Oh my God, they love the toy. I want to keep all the toys. No, you don't. I want my grandkids to play with them. No, you don't. You want your grandkid to play with 1 or 2 or 3 favorites. You don't want to keep boxes and boxes of kid toys for a grandkid 25 years from now that will then, the toys will have since deteriorated by the time it gets around to them. So kids' rooms need an attrition process, just like every other room in your house, but you need to do it in conjunction with the kid and in negotiation with the kid, so that you're not creating a sense of mother snatched this away from me without my permission. Like that is a setup for a little kid to feel damaged and injured for a long time to come. So resist the urge to do it without asking.
On that note, Valerie, who's with us on Facebook, said, my mom asked me about getting rid of stuff as a kid. I was okay at the time, so the stuff went. Later, I wished I still had them. And so,
it probably wasn't for everything. There's probably just one specific,
some
1 or 2 things we regretted, right?
Might be a good idea to put things into a cooling off space, put them away for a while, away where they're regularly out of sight, and then
that's a good, like the whole, when you can't let go of your own stuff, put it in a bin and put it in the garage and let it wait there for a while, and see if you can, if you miss it and you retrieve it, and you can give that same time out to the kids stuff. They agree to let it go, and you can go put it in a box and put it in the garage and see if they call it back. And you have to manage your own household, but you can do a little bit of stair stepping if that makes it easier for the little kid to let go. And just like you give away the book and then you're sorry, you can go get it again. Like if you give away 100 things and the kid remembers and wants 2 things back, then maybe you can go find one of those things and replace it again in deference and in honor to the kid. If they don't want 100 things back, they just want 1, maybe you can go find it back again, another, something like it, and see if that helps.
Emily Sue said, less stuff for kids may make them more creative and think better. I agree with that. We did not have Lego sets that had, a particular thing. I don't think were they making those yet when we were kids?
No. They didn't start out doing that. That was later.
Piles of Legos of various sizes, and you had to come up with your own thing to do with it. And I was a little mystified later on when I, started seeing those things, like, well, why do you need that? You can make whatever you can think of out of Legos. But also, to some extent, I think kids are sort of like cats. You get cats the fabulous toys and climbing things, and then they find the cardboard box that they really like.
Right.
And
It's true.
I mean,
There
you
is a
don't
kid.
you don't want to only give your kids cardboard boxes, but you can challenge them to make their play a little creative, right?
Well, and kids, of course, have imaginations that well outstrip our own. Like they have not had the adult responsibility overlay on top of their imagination, so they can have their own life and their own mental life. And the less there is to play with, the more they get to imagine. And so, it's good for them,
Or
right?
had their imagination completely stomped out of them by their first full-time job.
Right. Exactly.
Connie said, we used to store away 2/3 of the toys and change 1/3 out every quarter.
Right. And also, you don't want that whole collection to just keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger. You still want 1/3 out and 2/3 away, and stuff going away for attrition. And there's age appropriate things, right? Like there's going to be things that the toddler plays with that the elementary school kid does not. And so make use of the ability that they have outgrown those books, or they have outgrown those toys or clothes. Make use of the fact that it's not age appropriate anymore to help get it out of the house. So there may be a point where the kid is still playing with it, and then 2 years later, they've aged out of it. It's not interesting to them anymore, and you can let it go if that helps prevent you releasing something that the kid wants back later. Focus on the stuff that is age appropriate or age inappropriate now that they've gotten past, and let that be the thing that moves it out the door.
Valerie had a follow-up comment. She said, I bought the little golden book Corky as an adult because that book was one thing I was okay to let go as a kid.
And that you wanted back later.
And she wanted back later. Yeah.
Because it was a good memory. See, and that can happen. That's why people start collecting, the boombox you grew up with in your teenage years, or the band that was your favorite band in high school. Like you have fond memories of things that you remember, and having them is nostalgia that feeds your nostalgia to have it around the house. That's reasonable. You can do that. And you can let it go as a little kid, and you can go find something later. It'll be okay.
Jane said, my level of messiness is the same level as I grew up in. Flat surfaces are open game. That's why I think it's so important to model and teach.
Right, because we learn from what we're being trained, right?
Yeah.
You sort of learn by example, and a lot of parents I hear a lot that they feel inadequate because they know that they're teaching their kids bad habits. They know that they've called me because they know that they're teaching them not to be able to cope, or not to be organized in any way. And so they're trying to organize it for themselves, but also to be a good example to their kids. And, anything that you can do to help them with that is great. And if your parents modeled what you consider to be an organizational level that you don't want to stay in, then you get to go out and learn it fresh from scratch. And I'm sorry that that's true. And there's always coping mechanisms to be learned to make it better than how you grew up. Right. And so it may be that your parents set a bad example, and it may be the only thing that they taught you, but as an adult, you can certainly go learn new skills. And it would have been easier if you'd learned it as a young person, I'm sure. And isn't that true of all of us about all things? But you can learn to do it differently even as a grown-up. That's why you're listening to me, right? You're coming to learn.
Okay, there are a million comments we are not going to get to today, so you and I are going to have to sit down and go back through the chat, because I think there's more to unpack here.
Okay.
But we have to talk about next week.
Okay.
And such. Aging forces us to shift our thinking about many aspects of our lives, including our mobility, safety, comfort, and independence. In next week's episode, we'll dig into the pros and cons of aging in place from an organizing perspective and offer strategies for preparing your home for the future you. Please join us next Tuesday at the usual time, noon US Central Time, for Independence, Safety, Security, Comfort, Organizing to Age in Place. For those who are with us live, we have a YouTube channel with more than 170 videos on a wide variety of organizing topics. Visit cfhou.com/YouTube. And while you're there, subscribe to our channel and click the bell icon next to the subscribe button if you'd like to get notifications when we post something new. We have a new Patreon supporter this week, Julie. Thank you to Julie, who is our newest Patreon subscriber.
Thank you. We appreciate you so much.
If you'd like to help support our efforts with a recurring monthly donation of any size, please visit cfhou.com/Patreon, Patreon. Your contributions help us offset the costs of producing the weekly webcast and will help us fund new projects that we have in the works. Thank you again, Julie, for your generosity, and thank you to all our generous underwriters. Let's get to the tittle. The assignment this week is to evaluate each family member specific space in your home with an eye toward how the room is serving its primary user or users. For kids' rooms, is the room organized so that your child can play some role in tidying? Consider what changes you might make to involve your child in the organizing process. For man caves and she sheds, is the space serving the most important purpose or purposes to which it was originally dedicated? Does the primary user feel relaxed and peaceful in the room? Are there ways that other members of the household could help support the primary user of the room in keeping that space the way they want it? Do you want to add anything to that? I wrote that one entirely without your input.
Yes, I do want to add. I think that the best thing that you can do for a she shed or a man cave to be supportive is to just allow how it is without complaint. So if you're the person on the outside of the she shed, then don't complain about what's going on inside the she shed. That's how you can be supportive. And I would, if you're the person on the outside, think about how you react and reflect to the person on the inside, and vice versa.
Well, and also I think we occasionally run into the problem of encroachment.
Yes.
You know, like because you're not clear on the use of that room, one person who thinks of it as their room has to deal with the fact that, stuff gets stored in there, stuff gets hidden in there,
it's
gets parked in there.
Yeah.
And so we want you to sort of examine your behaviors about those users.
Well, and declare and claim it. If you need this space as your space dedicated, then you need to declare and claim, okay, we got to find another storage for this, because this little 10 by 10 square or whatever size room it is, this is your space. And I think if it's the only place in the house where you can set it to what is comfortable for you, then you have to sort of plant your flag in that space and set the parameters around which you want the room to be treated. And if you're the person on the outside of the room, then you get the rest of the house to do with how you will, and you need to surrender this 100 square feet to the other person's preferences
and needs.
Right? Yeah.
Okay. If you're watching this on YouTube, we would love for you to join us live. To receive notifications about upcoming events, we encourage you to join the meetup group by visiting cfhou.com/meetup. You can also follow us on Facebook by visiting cfhou.com/Facebook, or subscribe to our mailing list by visiting cfhou.com/subscribe. We love to hear from you, so please share your questions, comments, and topic suggestions in the YouTube comments, on Facebook, or anywhere that you find us. And you can always reach us through our website at clutterfairyhouston.com.
Lovely to see you guys. Thanks for joining us this week. And we're back in our home bases and everything's back to normal again. So thanks for surviving through all of our vacation stuff this summer. And we're ready to start the wrap up of the year. So come back and join us again. We'll be here every Tuesday. Good to see you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.